Okay, so we did the first 2 pages yesterday. And we saw first the pshat in the pasuk that the Veda brings about exaggerated bracha in Banachai Mazayne, and we don't understand exactly how that works. And we had to say exaggerated because those are 3 things. It says specifically about those 3 things. La b'schus Italia milsel b'mazlo. It's not based on schus, not based on your Veda, and yet the pasuk seems to say it is. So the Rebbe's answer to that question was exaggerated bracha. We don't understand exactly how that, what the mechanics of all of that is. Then the Rebbe asks 2 questions on page 324, which is really one question, but it's why is it that what we do is called a Veda? That word Aveda relates to the relationship of an Eved to an Adon. And our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu can't really be described that way, because in the revealed relationship of Eved and Adon, so the Adon is dependent on the Eved, just like the Eved is dependent on the Adon. Kadosh Baruch Hu is not dependent on us in any way, shape, or form. So why is it that we call what we do Aveda? Right? That was the question. That was the first question the Rebbe asked, right? Yeah? Okay. Then the Rebbe said, and relative to this issue, we seem to see a certain tension and ultimately contradiction in Ma'amar Chazal and Psukim. Some Psukim say that what we do affects the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and some Psukim say that what we do does not affect the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Right? The most obvious pasuk was the pasuk. It was a Medrash Chazal. V'chi ich v'slei l'Kadosh Baruch Hu. Does the Kadosh Baruch Hu care if you shecht from here, you shecht from there? Right? The only reason mitzvahs were given was l'tzadak ben asabriyas. Mitzvahs are good for us. Okay, now that one's rather shocking, right? Even though it makes a lot more sense than saying that what we do actually affects the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Because Kadosh Baruch Hu is beyond us. Ani avaya lo shenisi, the creation of the world didn't affect the Kadosh Baruch Hu, so why should our Aveda affect the Kadosh Baruch Hu? In order to understand that, so we quoted the Avedis HaKodesh. So I said erroneously, I said that the Avedis HaKodesh was with Moshe Pano, and I looked it up and now I forgot. I'll tell you again. There's no Shir Sunday, okay? Monday morning we'll have Shir, not Sunday. A Talmud of the Avedis HaKodesh was a Talmud of the Rashba. It's a Rishon who was a Talmud of the Rashba. Rashba is one of the most famous Svardish Rishonim from the base medrash of the Ramban. It's the Rashba. So Ben with a Gimel. Ben Gabbai, perhaps? Ben Gabbai? I'll look it up again. I can't look it up because my phone is in use right now. But, okay. So what did he say? So he said, this is the last thing we saw yesterday, this is the bottom of page 324. Ki ma ich besloi, that Maimer Chazal, that's relative to al adon yochid shodash shodashim, right? The one master who is the source of sources, and that level is completely transcendent. Therefore, that level of reality, lo yichbes le klal, doesn't care, so to speak. Ba'amnam, however, l'tzarech hakavod lashpia al haroshim al yonim, for the sake of the glory to affect the supernal heads, which are basically spheres, liyached Rosh Machshava b'Sefer, to bring about a revelation of the Rosh Machshava in Sefer, Sefer being Maisa, right? Maisa is the end, deed. Sarich Gamurhu, it's of great need. Now that's the very terse and difficult to understand language of Kabbalah, where basically what does that mean? Now we're going to see, the Rebbe already told us a little bit about this yesterday. That means The level called Atik is not affected. The level called Arich is affected. Okay, so now let's just look at that on the board for a second. Figure this out. And the people in Zimbabwe are going to be very, very upset because they're not. Oh, come on. Oh, what happened to my pen? You go away and the pen disappears. Oh my God. Let's see if oh, there's a green one, but it doesn't look very serious, this one, does it? Doesn't right? No, so someone decided to oh, this is actually no, maybe not. I don't know. What is this? Okay. Seder Ishtalshelus, Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya, 4 worlds. Those are the 4 worlds of Seder Ishtalshelus. This basically is usually translated emanation, creation, world of creation, form, action. Okay, 4 worlds. What's in those 4 worlds? Spheres. What's in those 4 worlds? Or godly energy, by definition, because that's the source of all existence. But also what's unique in those 4 worlds, and this is all called Seder Ishtalshelus. A shalshelet is a chain. It's the orderly downward emanation of light through worlds. Elam Atzilus, Elam Habriya, Elam Yitzira, Elam Asiya. Right? What's unique about those worlds? The clothing of Ars and Kalim in vessels. What's a vessel? A vessel allows for a limited, specific expression of light. Can see it. This vessel reveals the blue and white. Without this vessel, you don't see the blue and light. Doesn't mean there isn't blue and light, but you don't see it. The light out here has blue in it. How do I know? There it is. Right? Now, that means it also hides the infinite other expressions of light. Right? Light can express itself in an infinite amount of colors for all intents and purposes. Right? Just add another drop of white or another drop of black and you've got another shade. Okay, fine. Right? So that infinite possibility has been limited to a specific expression. That's a kli. That's what kalim do. Right? So kalim can do that in elokus, in godliness. And those 10 kalim are called the 10 spheres which existed in revealed form in Elam Atzilus. Or those kalim can actually be physical, which is you walking around in Elam Atzilus. A kli for godly light. You are expressing the notion of existence, and that existence comes from godly light. Now the kli can conceal the light very, very powerfully, or the kli can reveal the light. In Elam Atzilus, the light is completely revealed. So what's revealed there? 10 different aspects of godly reality called the 10 spheres. Right? Down here, the light is completely concealed by the kli. The kli hides the light completely. Doesn't mean that there's no light here. It's just completely concealed by the kli, by the vessel. And the vessel is a vessel of what you and I call yesh, very powerful yesh, very powerful independent existence, so that it posits itself as an independent being. I am because I am, which is completely false. But doesn't mean it's not truly how you relate to physicality, or at least in terms of its terms. On its terms. Ultimately, you realize that it comes from God, like everything else. Okay, right, 4 worlds. We're not going to go through the 4 worlds, the difference between them. That's, most of the people, many of the people who did that were in Basilagan. A couple of them. Okay. So, but one main difference, this is godly reality. This is creative reality. Where does Bria Yesh Mi'ayin happen? Where does that event called creatio ex nihilo. Where does that happen? The creation of something from nothing. This world gives birth to this world. This is godly, this is created. Right? Later? No, that's a pretty serious difference. This is very powerful. Allowing himself to be expressed in 10 different ways, called 10 spheres. This is created reality, which is also ultimately exists only because God exists, but it's separate from him, it's not him. Right? This exists because God exists, don't bow down to it. It's called the River Zara. So don't bow down to the angels that live here either. Okay. Now, Atzilus, where does Atzilus start? Well, where does every world start? Where's the revealed reality of every world start? Oh. Das. Gedula, which is chesed. Gevura. Tiferes. Netzach. There are the 10 spheres. Okay? Fine. So this is the beginning. Reishis Chochmah. The beginning of any particular reality is called Chochmah. The beginning of your conscious reality is Chochmah. Right? It's Chochmah. The power of intellect. That's where your consciousness begins. You're not aware of it there. You're only aware of it when it comes into a state called Bina. Ani mevin, I understand. That's why you can't conjugate this verb. You can conjugate this. There is no I involved. It's the source of I. It's the source of that experience called my own consciousness. Okay, so that's Chochmah, every word. So what's above Chochmah?
The Kesser.
Kesser. Kesed. We just talked about two different aspects of Kesed. Atik and Arich. All this was to explain what we're about to read. Okay? Atik and Arich. There's a third level of Kesed. There's 3 levels of the crown. 3 heads of the crown. Atik, Arich, and there's a level which we're not going to run into in this mimer. Right law. Which means Reisha V'lo Yoda V'lo Is Yoda. So that place in Kesser that is basically one with the essence of God. Right? Then there's Atik, which is sometimes called Atik Yomi, usually just called Atik. And then there's Arich, which is sometimes called Arich Anpin, the long countenance. Because these 6 spheres here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are often called Zoh, Ze'er Anpin, the small countenance, whereas Arich is called Arich Aroch, the long countenance. Okay, but Atik and I don't like these words there because sometimes you're running into it, but you're usually not. Arich Anpin, Atik Yemin, ancient of days, it will be translated in English, which doesn't know what that means. Okay, so those 2 levels of Kesser, one is completely transcendent, one is the source of Chochmah, of the next world. Okay? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we have to know. Atik is going to be completely transcendent. Arich is the, so to speak, the function of Kesser. What is Kesser? Function and being, 2 different states of reality. I'm going to sit down so that I can reunite with the people of Bangladesh who I feel so separate from. I just wanted to say something in Bangladeshi so they'd feel at home. They'd know I'm back. I don't know any Bangladeshi, but probably they don't either, so it doesn't matter.
Amen.
being and function are two very important things in the world, right? The Western world, if you can say these things about the Western world, you can't make general, right? All generalizations are false, right? That rather. But in general, the Western world has issues with being. They're very focused on function. That's why they kill unborn babies, because unborn babies have no function. They have as much being as the doctor killing them, but they have no function. So they just feel no compunction whatsoever in allowing that thing to continue to live. Right? When you're into function and not being, it's dangerous. That's one of the dangerous expressions of it. That doesn't mean we are not anti-abortion completely and totally, okay? The Jewish religion allows for abortions under certain circumstances, okay? But I mean, in general, convenience wasn't one of the circumstances. Okay? So being is what the thing is. Function is what it does. So generally, being would be what we'd call in Chassidus the panemius of it, the inner reality of it, what it is. And function is the external expression of it, what it does, so to speak, outside of itself. So when we talk about panemius and chitzonius of something, often we can talk about the panemius, what it is, and the chitzonius, what it does. Right? So, in that context, you can say that atik is the panemius of Keser, what Keser is, a completely transcendent state of reality, infinite godly light. Right? Arich is, and it even is sometimes referred to as this in this way, which is funny. To use the word chitzonius by Keser is just sort of crazy, but okay. It is sometimes in Chassidus actually it's the chitzonius of Keser. Here we're not going to say that. We're going to say the lower level of Keser. The Rebbe is not going to use the word chitzonius, external reality, relative to Arich, but it is used in different places in Chassidus. Okay, so it's so to speak, the external expression of Keser. What does it mean? That's what Keser does. What does Keser do? It gives birth to Chochmah. It gives birth to something other than it. Right? Gives birth to it. So what does Keser of Atzilus do? Give birth to the world of Atzilus. Yeah? Okay? So that's the function of Keser. So in you, that aspect of Keser in your neshama, what is it? Well, we talked about it yesterday. What's Arich? Arich would be Ratzon. It's the function of Ratzon. Well, it's the source of every conscious activity that you do. Everything you do is because you want to. You don't do anything because you don't want to. And we've talked about this before. The only thing you might do is a reflex, right? Move your hand quickly away from fire. Move your leg when the doctor hits that place in your leg with his little hammer to see if your reflexes are working. Okay, so that's a reflex. But everything you do in life, every activity you do is because you want to. I didn't want to get out of bed today. That's not true. I did want to get out of bed today. I wanted to get out of bed today more than I wanted to face the consequences of staying in bed. Whatever those consequences are. I would miss Chassidus, I'd feel bad about myself, my boss would fire me, whatever it happens to be. Right? So I want to keep my job more than I want to stay in bed, so I get out of bed. Right? We've talked about this many times. It's just a very important thing to understand, right? That there's no such thing as doing something you don't want. Now, it might be that it's a very external expression of your Ratzon, and panemius of Ratzon is connected to something else, and sometimes you let an external expression of your will overcome your true inner will, which is you really want to be connected to something, but for whatever reason you do something that might disconnect you from it. But you can't say you didn't want to do that. Who did it? It wasn't me.
The devil.
Right? The devil. The devil made me do it.
Yes.
Right. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow do. Okay. So what's Ratzon? Ratzon is not conscious you, but it's the part of not conscious you that is responsible for everything that happens in conscious you. So that's like Arich. Arich is not Uris in Kalim. It's not light in vessels. It's not Mamale. It's Sevev. It's all-encompassing light too powerful to be clothed in a Kli. But it powers the light, that it's the source of the light that's drawn down into the Kli called Chacham. Okay? You know what Silas. Say them. Okay. V'hainu. So we saw a little bit of this yesterday. We'll just read it again. V'hainu. The bebechinas adon yochid. The bebechinas adon yochid. Shoresh kol shoreshim. That lofty level. Ein inyan aveda negea klal. Aveda does not affect. Ki'im, except. Bihislav shusei beseder ishtalshlus. When it's clothed in seder ishtalshlus. What's it clothed in? Vessels. By the time you have kalim, so you have something called seder ishtalshlus. Hachel, beginning. Mi bechinas a chokhmah. What's the beginning of all that? Chokhmah shiureshis ishtalshlus. The beginning of ishtalshlus. The chokhmah hireshis. Reshis chokhmah. Vagam l'maylim, and also beyond this. There's one level beyond it that's also affected by our Veda. What's that? Bechinas a keser. A certain aspect of keser. Bechina means quality. The quality of keser, the level of keser. And what level of keser? Hine bechina tachteina shava. The lower level of keser. What's that? Bechinas arich. All right? Okay, that's what we just learned. Shehi Shadash and Etzolim, and that's the source of the Netzolim. What's the root of the word Netzolim? Atzilus. Noigeya inyan Aveda, and on that level of Veda is effects. That level is affected by Aveda. What do we say in Chassidus? Now, here we are talking about levels that we don't affect. So, our Aveda doesn't really do much. Okay. Well, we say in Chassidus that when you do a mitzvah down here in Eilam Hazeh, you are meisif in Eilam Hatzilus. You're adding light in Eilam Hatzilus. Well, that's what we just said, right? What are you touching when you do an act of Aveda? Arich. What's Arich? The source of light in Eilam Hatzilus. So when you're doing a mitzvah, you're touching Arich, so to speak, allowing light to be drawn down from Arich into Hatzilus. Right? We're Meisif Ar in Eilam Hatzilus. That's pretty amazing. Now, in this mimer, we're talking about levels we don't affect. Okay, so then it sounds like, it's limited. Well, okay, limited. Meanwhile, when you put on tefillin in the morning, when you sit and learn Torah as you're doing right now, you are adding light to all of Seder Ishtalshlus, beginning with Eilam Hatzilus. That's a pretty amazing thing to do. Eilam Hatzilus is the Eibishter. Eilam Hatzilus is 10 spheres. Meisifar and Eilam Hatzilus. Now, Rabbi's going to explain how that plumbing works. Mashen ken bebechinas atik. That's not the case of atik. It's not affected. And what's atik? Pnimius akesser. The inner state of Kesser. Meaning what Kesser is, not what Kesser does, what Kesser is. And what is Kesser? Transcendent. That's what Kesser is. Ubiyurian. Okay, so that's the headline. Now that I was going to explain it.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
So it's saying we can affect the level of Atzilus, but that's different. We say we can affect. That's different than what is said about Moshe being actually a part or can be in the world, let's say. That's different, yeah?
Well, the source of your neshama is also Metzilas.
Yeah.
Neshama shenasat to be taharahi. What's taharahi? Tzilas. Where does your neshama come from? Tzilas. I mean, ultimately it comes from Atzma, so we know, okay, Beseder, but that aspect of your neshama that's drawn down into your body, its immediate source is Eilam Hatzilus. Neshama, you said it this morning. I hope you said it this morning. You should have said brachas this morning, and you can't learn Torah unless you said brachas of Torah. Right? It's like you can't eat a cookie unless you said a Messias. You're not allowed to eat Torah unless you say the brachas before. So when we say neshama shenasat to be taharahi, it's tahor, meaning what? Its source is elam atzilas. Tabarasa, you created it. It comes down through elam abriya. Atayetzarta, you formed it. Comes down through elam ayetzira. Atanafachta bi, you blew it into me in elam asiya. We say that every day. Right? So all of our neshamas are connected to Atzilus. That might be why we have an effect on Atzilus. So that's a separate issue. But right now, all we're learning is what we do affect and don't affect at this point. We affect Arech, which is the level of Keser responsible for the light that's drawn into Elam Atzilus. So we don't just affect Atzilus, we affect the level beyond Atzilus. And we also we don't affect Atik, which is a completely transcendent level. Yeah? That's what we're saying. Now, what does that look like? I don't know what that looks like. Because I don't know what metaphysical reality looks like. But that means we have the Rebbe is going to explain what that effect means. Ubi or inyan. The explanation of all this. And if you look at footnote 23, the Rebbe says this is all based on a mimer of the Rebbe Rashab from the year Tafresh Ayin Zayin, which was 1917. It's a good year. My father was born that year. That regarding Seder Ishtalshlus, so our Aveda affects Hein ba Kelim v'Hein ba Eres. We affect not only the Kelim of Seder Ishtalshlus, the vessels, but also the Or. Because again, what's unique of Seder Ishtalshlus? Or is nimshach into Kelim. Or is mislavesh. It's clothed in Kelim. What does clothing mean? It allows for it to express itself. That's hislavshus. Now, so that means hislavshus has an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is it allows for the or to express itself. The disadvantage is the or is concealed in that which it's clothed. So even when you're looking at a malach, and the malach allows the light to shine through it, the malach is like a clear glass, so you can see what's in the glass, but you're still aware of the existence of the malach, which is not the Eibishter. Right? It's a kli, it's a vessel that is powered by a Kadosh Baruch Hu, but it doesn't hide a Kadosh Baruch Hu like you and I do. When you look at a human being, you don't see the light. When you look at a malach, you do. You see the light of a Kadosh Baruch Hu shining through the malach, so to speak, like a glass as opposed to a porcelain cup. In terms of you, just the Ratzon is a makif. It's not clothed in a kli, right? Ratzon isn't clothed in any particular vessel in you. It powers all of them equally. Intellect is clothed in your brain. Sight is clothed in your eyes. Speech is clothed in your mouth. Hearing is clothed in your ears. Movement is clothed and expressed through basically your arms and your feet. I mean, you can move your nose and your ear, but basically movement is arms and feet. Okay. Arms and legs. Okay. So each particular limb, kli, expresses a different aspect or of the soul. Right. Ratzon, where's Ratzon expressed? Everywhere, equally. The reason I'm talking is because I want to. The reason I'm seeing is because I want to. The reason I'm moving is because I want to. The reason I'm thinking is because I want to. All Ratzon. It's not clothed in any particular one. It powers each of them equally. Oh, okay. What's unique of Seder Ishtalshlus or in Kli? Above Seder Ishtalshlus, basically, we don't talk about Kelim. Now, of course, we do, but in a completely different way. So, to keep it simple, yes, Kelim in Seder Ishtalshlus, no Kelim above. To keep it simple. Dehine, inyan kelim hu helim or. The whole notion of kelim is the concealment of the light, and what does that allow for? V'hu nesinus makim. That's a pretext. L'metzias dezulas, to the existence of the other. What allows for the existence of the other? A kli. The or itself is by definition one. What allows for differentiated existence? Kalim. Look on this table. All the stuff on this table is differentiated existence. The or that's allowing you to see it, now this is or not being clothed in it, this is or reflecting off it, Peseda, but it's still a mushal that's useful. Right? If there were none of this stuff on the table and no table, then all you would see as you were sitting in the chair you're in is just or all around you. Okay, you see the floor, I understand, right? But there'd just be or all around you. Okay, so put the table in there. All of a sudden, instead of seeing just, light all around you, sort of nothing all around you, you see a table. Okay, what's allowing you to see the table? The R is allowing you to see the table. The R doesn't bring the table into existence, the physical order, right? That's not why there's a table, right? But it allows you to see the table. Godliness, the reason there is a table is because there's light, godly light clothed in the table, giving the table existence. Okay, so there's godly light giving this existence and this existence and this existence and this existence. All these different states of reality are different expressions of godly light, and what allows for that differentiation, and therefore the separateness of this from this, from this, from this, kli. Right? Move the kalim out of the way, even in physical terms. What do you see? Well, it's just all one light. It's just light. Same. What's the difference in the light over here and the light over here? Nothing. It's all the same. It's all one. Right? What's the difference in the light over here and the light over here? Oh, this one's expressing itself in blackness, and this one's expressing itself in brownness, and this is expressing itself in whiteness. This is bad. This is good. Okay. Ubirin, we say to Yishtalshin again, Inyan Aveda B'Kelim Ba'Eres. Dehine. Inyan Kelim who Helim Or is a concealment of the Or, Nesinas Makam Limitzias the Zulas, and the giving of place, meaning the pretext, of the existence of the other, right? Two, or a zillion. Kikashera or mayor, that when the light itself is shining, azay yeshna rakamakur. What's in existence? Only the source of the light. The ein shum netzias dezulas, and there is no existence of the other. There's no planets, there's no grass, there's nothing. There's just a sun. Okay? When you look up, what's the only thing you're aware of? Sun. You're seeing light emanating from the sun. But what are you aware of? The sun, source of light. What's it not doing? It's not shining off or being absorbed by anything. Because there's nothing there. It's just it. It's just, there's empty space. It's not exactly empty because it's full of sunlight. But there's space. So all you see is the sun. That's without kalim. I mean, even the sunlight you see is something other than the sun on a certain level. Right, so the reason, and if you're up in outer space, so then you only see the sun, you wouldn't see any sunlight. There's sunlight all around. It's everywhere. It's reflecting off the spaceship that you're walking outside of. And it's reflected off you, and it's reflected off that cord that's connecting you to the ship, we hope. Those guys are really brave, boy. I wouldn't do that. Shoo. Right? Okay, spacewalk. Okay, so it must be the most amazing experience in the world, but still, my goodness. Okay, but why is there no light around you? Of course there's light around you. Full of light. What isn't there?
Okay.
No kli to reveal the light. It's a vacuum. So there's just no kli to reveal the light. But there's light there. How do you know? Well, it's shining off you. When the guy looks down at himself, what does he see? He sees the sunlight reflecting off him. So that means there's sunlight here, but if he looks here, it's pitch black. All right? Same as moonlight. Well, sunlight, sorry. Sunlight hitting the moon. So in between the sun and the moon, it's dark. Why is it dark? Because the sunlight is passing over the atmosphere, so there's no kli to allow for the sunlight to reflect off anything. So there's no expression of sunlight, but there's all sorts of light there. It's full of light. How do you know? Well, it hits the moon. So obviously this whole space is full of light. You just don't see it. Why not? No kalim. If there's no kli, you don't see it. Oh, but that's interesting because when you do see it, It's moonlight. No one sang any songs about dancing in the sunlight reflecting off the moon. Right? You just don't see. Van Morrison never would have made it with that one. It's dancing in the moonlight. Right? Okay. I don't remember the tune, but I remember there was a tune and it was a good one. I just don't remember what the tune was. You must remember it, no? Right, he was, was he English? He must have been English.
He was Irish.
Irish, okay. No, he couldn't be, yeah. They were all from somewhere other than North America. Okay. So that's what Kalim do. Kalim, on one hand, reveal. But interestingly enough, they reveal themselves. Not so much the light. Right? So the moon is all the moon is doing is revealing the existence of the sun. But when you look up, you go, whoa, what a nice moon. Okay. Yeah, that's true. But what are you really seeing? You're not seeing, there's no such thing as moonlight. You're seeing sunlight reflected off this rock that's up there called the moon.
There is no dark side of the moon, really. Matter of fact, it's all dark.
It's all dark.
Yeah.
There you go. But there is a side that is reflecting sunlight relative to us. Right. And it's our moon. Right? Like we don't share our moon with Venus. We share our sun with Venus, but we don't share our moon with Venus.
It's our only moon.
It's our only moon. We only have one.
Yeah.
We like our moon.
Yeah.
We tell time based on our moon. Today is the end of the moon. This afternoon, we're not going to say Tachnun because it's Erev Moon Day. Right? Well, it is.
Greatest description of Rosh Chodesh.
Rosh Chodesh. We said it.
I'm going to use that for the rest of my life.
Well, it happens to be very fascinating. I'm going to talk to a bunch of college students, and they told me that I have 5 minutes to explain to them why they should keep Shabbos.
5 minutes?
Yeah, I'm speaking at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon to 150 college students. And I've been told that I should tell them why it's important to keep Shabbos in 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 seconds, because God said so.
Right. Oh, okay. There you go. So, who's God? Oh, that's the other 4 minutes. 4 minutes. So, I was trying to figure out how to do that. So I figured I had just been on a bunch of other college campuses. So I decided I'm going to use them as, I don't like to say guinea pigs about people, but whatever, So they actually were quite taken by the idea. They found it very fascinating. They never thought about it, that the Eibishter created space and time. There's another level called nefesh, to life, but in general, the physical reality is space and time. That's what it is. Now, time is more ethereal than space. Space is. But how do we measure time? We measure time by virtue of the movements of bodies in space. So if someone were to come down to Earth, it wouldn't take them long to figure out there's something called the day. They just hang around for a while and they notice it get dark and it got light and it got dark and there's this pattern here and okay, it seems to repeat upon itself. That wouldn't take very long, right? They'd have to be a little longer and they would have to make sure they're not in England, but in order to understand there's something called a month, because they would have to see the moon. You'd have to be somewhere without clouds constantly. Vancouver would be a bad place to learn this in the winter, right? They have to notice that there's this moon and it's actually getting bigger and it's getting smaller and it's getting bigger and it's getting smaller. And sooner or later, they'd figure out there's something called a month. In all the Westerns, so the Indians would talk about many moons ago. Okay, right, meaning many cycles of the moon ago. Makes sense, right? If you hung around even longer and you were in most of the world, you would notice that there's a cycle that seems to take a lot longer, but I don't know whether they'd necessarily be aware of 4 seasons. Probably take them a while to be aware of 4 seasons, but okay, they would notice that there was a time when there was a lot of light and it was warmer, and then there was a time where there was less light and it was colder, and then that also kept happening. So they'd figure that out. They'd figure out days, they'd figure out months, and they'd figure out years. There's only one thing you can't figure out by virtue of looking at physical reality. It's called a week. There is no week in physical reality. A week is by definition godly time. Shabbos is godly time. God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. Now everybody accepts that premise, which is really interesting. Right? I mean, without knowing it, the whole world is testifying to the fact that God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh, because everybody counts time in terms of weeks. Even, I don't know, everybody, I don't know, there might be some people in tents in Africa who don't, and in jungles in the Amazon who don't. The Chinese used to not, evidently. They had a 10-day week.
The French tried to do the same thing after the French Revolution.
Ah, yeah?
Yeah, they tried to
Get
reject God.
yeah.
10-second minute, a 10-minute hour, they tried to ruin everything.
Right, so it'd be hard to run a 4-minute mile if it was a 10-second minute, huh? So that would be elusive. So
If the seconds be a lot longer, the minute a lot shorter.
That's, I mean, by virtue of the fact that you are experiencing week, you are experiencing godly time, and there's a time in there that is specifically godly time, and that's Shabbos. That's the recognition of the fact that time was created on 7 different levels, and the holiest level is Shabbos, and so that's why we celebrate Shabbos. That's why you should, and if you don't, you're going to go to hell. Oh, we're not going to say that. We're not going to say that?
No.
Oh,
I don't think I'll end with the college kids.
no, okay. It's not. That's just. I mean, we all go anyway. So, it's longer, shorter, better, worse, but everybody goes to Ganem and is cleansed a little bit. So I mean, it's not a good reason to do it or not do it. Rabbi Levinger said, I'll throw this in also. It's like Shabbos is you're on a cruise with your wife. I forget how to say this to a group with 2 genders, your husband, your wife, wife, husband,
Partner.
with your partner. No, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that. Significant, I know, but I don't want to say that either. Because I don't want to give them any ideas. Right? So that you're with your wife or your husband, and they brought along their computer, and while you're on the cruise ship, they're busy doing work on their computer. You say to them, what are you doing? I say, well, we have to pay for the cruise ship. I mean, how do we pay for the cruise ship? I mean, the only way we do that, we have to work. I have to work. Without working, it doesn't go. I said, but wait a minute. We came on the cruise ship to connect to each other, not to work. So put away the computer. Let's connect. That's Shabbos. It's a very beautiful idea. Put it away for a day and connect. That's why you're going on. That's why you're on the cruise ship. You're not on the cruise ship to do work. You want to work, stay home. It's 1 day a week. You're on a cruise with the Eberstein. But you have to put away the computer. Okay. So Kalim are all about a concealment of light, which allows for Kikashera or Meir as Ayeshrak Amakar. When the light is revealed, then you're only aware of the source of the light. The ancient Metzias Tezulis, and there's no other reality. Which, interesting enough, is what happens to you and I if there's too much light. Right? If you come out of the ophthalmologist's office and he or she has given you those drops which do away with the tzimtzum that your pupil does to light, to allow you to see light in the right intensity. So when you walk out of the office, what do you see? Nothing. You're blinded by the light. There's so much light you can't experience differentiated reality, right? So then you have to sort of stand there for a minute and let your pupils get used to. Now that happens when you turn on the light in the morning in the bathroom also. Right? Your pupils quickly constrict. It's called tzimtzum, which allows you to see differentiated reality. Now you see the sink, right? And your toothpaste. You can't find your toothbrush. Right? Okay. Aval kelim, shem helim ha'or, they're a concealment of the light, tzimtzum, heim neisni makam l'metzias nazulas. They allow for the existence of the other. Va'ad, to such an extent, sheberibu ishtalshlus, through a multitudinous of downward emanation, nisava mehem b'chinas nivroim. Through the kelim, you can actually have created reality, creations, which express their own existence, and not necessarily the existence of that which created them. And since the whole notion of kelim is the reality of the other, it's what allows for multiplicity to exist. For safe, and when all is said and done, through the great downward emanation of this light, you end up with created reality. So then obviously, on that level of reality, so obviously on that level, our avodah affects that level. Why? Well, because who are we? We're down there in the world of kelim, using kelim to serve the Eibishter. So we affect the kelim by virtue of using them in a positive way. So if I use that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, and I use it in line with His will, so obviously I'm elevating that kli to be connected to its source in Elokus. That makes perfect sense. So my avodah will affect the reality of kelim, because I'm a kli, the thing I'm using is a kli, I'm in the realm of kelim, and that's where I am, that's what I am, that's what's happening where I live. And so if I use that reality positively, in line with the ratzon, with the will of Kadosh Baruch Hu, so then I'm elevating that state of reality. So if I take the book and I use it for a positive purpose, I elevate the book. If I take that state of reality and chas v'shalom v'chas use it for a negative purpose, so I cause it to descend down into a state of darkness, disconnected from its godly source. That's relatively easy to understand. Because all avodah, where am I doing this avodah? Well, I'm a nivra, down in the realm of nivroim, using created reality to serve God. Okay, so I'm elevating created reality. Kelim. That makes sense. What about the or? The Rebbe says we also affect the or, that is responsible for the existence of that thing. Let's see. I'm sorry. On the level of kelim, our avodah affects that level. A lack of avodah. So now I've made a blemish in that kli. Right? I have think about it. It doesn't necessarily even have to be a completely physical object. A moment in time, which is a created reality, as hard as it is to relate to time, but time is created. The Eibishter created time. We measure it by virtue of the movement of bodies in space, but time is a created reality, and somehow it passes. Okay, whatever that's all about. Very bizarre. You can't grab it, but it's there. There's this thing called time. It's actually a mitzvah object once a year when we count it. It actually becomes the mitzvah object, like a lulav, even though it doesn't take up any space. Okay, well, it's because it's not space, it's time. Okay, so time, created time. What if I passing through some moments in time, and I could theoretically have used those moments for something positive, but I didn't use those moments for something positive, so I have somehow blemished those moments, just like a physical object, which theoretically I could have used for something positive, and instead I didn't. So I have a dollar bill, and I could have used this dollar bill to do a mitzvah of either giving stucco or buying something of use, and instead I bought a lollipop. I bought a lot of lollipops. I bought a giant lollipop, a dollar lollipop, which will keep me licking for the next 6 hours. Okay, fine. So I took that dollar and used it for something completely unimportant, and so to a certain degree I blemished that poor dollar. That dollar could have been folded up and put in a pushka, and instead it turned into a lollipop. Nebuch. Okay. So to time. Time can be used positively or it can be, so to speak, wasted. So that creates certain pagam in the kli. V'lo not only the kli, ela shegam ba'or, even in the godly light that's vitalizing that moment in time or that physical object, negeya inyan aveda. Our aveda affects that also. Dehine, av sheheder aveda, even though the lack of aveda, pegim rak b'hakelim, affects only the kli, v'loi ba'or, the godly light that's vitalizing that kli isn't affected negatively. It's still godly light. The kli has now been pushed down into a place of base physicality, whereas it could have been a kli that would be elevated to a state of kedusha, of holiness, because I can turn it into a kli that's revealing godliness. Instead, I allowed the kli to take me to a place of concealing godliness, so I brought the kli down to that place. What about the or? Well, the or is still the Eibishter. Mikol makim, nevertheless. Al yedea pagam ba'kelim, by virtue of the blemish in the kli, mistalika or kli. It goes out the light from the kli. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that the light goes out of the kli so the kli no longer exists, because obviously the kli is still in existence. If chas v'shalom, a person were to use a physical object for something negative, the physical object doesn't go out of existence. It's still there. Okay, so what does the Rebbe mean that the light leaves the kli? The godly light that was potentially about to be revealed by using that kli to connect to the Eibishter, that level of godly light has disappeared. It's gone away, so to speak. It's mistalik mina kli. What's this kli? What's this vessel? What's this physical object? This physical object is something that has the potential to be used in the service of God. Therefore, it can reveal a certain aspect of God's light in the world, in addition to its essential existence. Okay, but it could be used for something positive, and therefore would bring about an even more powerful expression of godly light. But the person didn't use it for that. Okay. So the person, instead of using the pot to cook food for someone else and do a big mitzvah, they used the pot and they hit someone over the head with it. Okay, so that's not so good. So now what happened to the kli? I understand how this kli has now been affected negatively by virtue of the fact that it was used for this negative action. But what about the godly light powering the kli? So the godly light powering the kli and keeping the kli in existence, so that light is there. But the godly light that was destined ultimately to be revealed in Eilam Hazeh by virtue of using this vessel for positive godly purpose, that level of light disappears. It wasn't used. This kli is a potential, is that which could be used to reveal godliness. And what was it used for? To hit someone over the head. So that level of light disappeared. So the light's also affected. Because every physical reality has the potential to be a kli to reveal godliness. Now, sometimes the revelation of godliness through physical reality is by virtue of not using it. Right? You can reveal godliness through pork by not eating it. You can't elevate the pork to a state of kedusha. That you can't do. It's not. It's klipa. But you can use it to reveal elokus, so that by virtue of saying, I've just been on a lot of planes lately, right? By virtue of saying no, thank you when they offer you the non-kosher food, so then you've revealed godliness in that. The whole purpose of the existence of that non-kosher food is for you not to eat it. That's why it exists. Okay, fine. So you've elevated it, so to speak. It's expressing its purpose. Eating it would be the exact opposite of why it was created. The guy next to you can eat it. Al yedei mikomakim al yedei pagamba kelim mistalika or miakli vasiluk miakli, and this we'll stop in a couple of minutes. Vasiluk miakli, and this distancing itself from the kli nageh gamba or, it affects the or. Why? Shekavanas are the intention of this light. He sheyar b'kelim is that it should be illuminated in this kli. There's a certain aspect of godly light that this kli is destined to reveal. So I came down into Elam Hazeh. So by virtue of not using that aspect of Elam Hazeh for the purpose for which it was created, I've not allowed it to express the godliness that it was destined to express. And that level of godliness, what happens to it? Disappears. So there's a moment in time, it's easier to understand in terms of time. There's a moment in time where you could have shown someone a smiling face and made them feel better. You didn't. That level of time could have been elevated. You didn't elevate it. That means that level of godly light that was destined to be revealed in that moment in time wasn't revealed. Where'd it go? Back to its source above. It wasn't revealed down here. It's mistalik mina kli. Kasher are mistalik mina kli. And when the light leaves the vessel, again, that doesn't mean the vessel ceases to exist. Of course it exists. But there's two levels of light. There's the level of light that's giving the vessel its vitality. And then there's also that level of godly light that was destined to be revealed by that vessel down here in Olam Hazeh. Because everything has a purpose. And if it wasn't used for its purpose, so then it was a fitzfus. It was a waste. Kasher mistag mi'akli azai eina or memales tafkida. Then the light doesn't fulfill its purpose. Because the purpose isn't simply the physical existence of this object. The purpose is that the physical existence of this object should be that which brings about a revelation of the Eibishter in Elam Hazeh. That's why there's physicality, not just so there should be physicality. So yes, the Eibishter is the source of the physicality, but the pneumius of all that is that physicality should be used to express Elokus. And it's not. So then that level of aura disappears. That's unbelievable. And that's why the Aveda also affects light. Kevin shebeheder Aveda, and a lack of Aveda, nasa silika or the light disappears, so to speak. Shemistalik me a kli goes up from the kli. Umamelo, and therefore consequently, it's not fulfilled its intention. Okay, one more line and then we'll stop. We'll pick up on Monday, right? Not on Sunday. No share on Sunday. Furthermore, we're going to show that it also affects Arich. Because if there's a positive effect in Arich, there's also going to be a negative effect, right? So that's what the Rebbe is explaining this line. This Inyan of Aveda also affects the light that's beyond the Slavshis Bekelim. Why? Well, because that's the source of the light. Also the light that's beyond being clothed in the kelim, which is arich. Harihu shardish al kol panim. It's the source. The word shardish is obviously the source of the word source. Harihu shardish al kol panim. It's the source laor mislavish b'kelim, to the light that's clothed in the vessels. Can we read three more lines to finish this idea, and then we'll get to Atik on Monday. And that's why we say that our Aveda affects Arich. It's the source of Atzilus and down. The Kevin Shebenet Solim, that since in this emanated reality, Negain in Aveda Kanal, our Aveda affects these levels of reality, not just the physical world, but all of the worlds above. Lochin gam b'shoresh hanetzalim, so too in the source of emanated reality, b'bechinas arich, negayin in Aveda affects that also. So now we were talking about it only in terms of the physical object, but that ultimately has a domino effect throughout all of Seder Ishtalshelus, because that or emanated down through all of Seder Ishtalshelus in order to ultimately be expressed in this physical object, which would be used for a particular action that's positive and holy. And if that doesn't happen, so then that light went through all of that trouble, so to speak, for nothing, right? And if it does happen, then Baruch Hashem, that they're now elevating that light back up to its source in Arich. So you're touching that button and allowing more light to emanate down into Seder Ishtalshelus. You're Meisif Her and Elam Hatzilos by doing a mitzvah. Okay, so that's the mechanics of it all that the Rebbe just explained. And the next thing that the Rebbe is going to explain for just a few lines, it'll take 5-6 lines, is how Atik is not affected. We'll see that on Monday.
Sunday?
Not Sunday. Sunday I'm not here. I'm convincing students to keep Shabbos in Prague. And next Shabbos I get to be at home. I'm very excited.
I don't know what they call it, the dark side of the moon, when like the definition is like it never faces us. Like, what does that
After all we just learned, that's what's still there. Think of all these other things we learned too.
Hey Rabbi,
Yes.
No, it just stuck in the back of my mind.
okay, can you just clarify briefly? So let's say there's